Hello everyone, and welcome to another beer review. Now, I've been down at the bar again, because if you looked at the last video, I went down to the bar because all the shops were shut, and I was going to get some beer to do some beer review videos, and I couldn't because the bloody shops are shut because it's basically Good Friday at Easter holidays. And in Denmark, everything shuts. The buggers, apart from hotel bars. So yeah, I went down there and I had a look to see what they had this time. They've got the Nordic, which I'm not really want to do because it's Carlsberg Nordic, which is kind of a pale ale that's quite hoppy, but it's only 0.5%. I just don't really see the point in that. They had obviously normal Carlsberg. I did the brown ale. They do have an IPA, a kind of citrusy IPA on tap, and I thought, no, I'm not interested in that. But what they did have, and I haven't had for many, many, many years, is Tuborg Classic Pilsner. So I thought, why not? Let's have a little bit of retro in your life, you know what I mean? You know? I mean, Jesus, when Tuborg was going about, you know, my dad was carving the roast beef and the turkey with the old electric knives, you remember? Oh, those are the days, eh? Cut the fuck-o-matic, you know what I mean? Jesus, you know, you can do linoleum with them, the whole fucking lot. It was brilliant. So yes, so today we're on Tuborg Classic, which is 4.6%, and God, try to remember what this was. I would probably say it'd be around about the kind of at least 80 kroner to 85 kroner, because the brown ale was roughly about 85, so this will be maybe at least 80 to 85 between the two, because I wasn't paying attention. Because I was distracted because there was a busload of idiots that were coming in to get checked in, and the hotel just wasn't prepared for it because they didn't have enough people on reception, and the queue was ridiculous. It's going all the way around in towards the bar. So there you go. So again, we've got another draft option. So what does this smell of? Grain. That's all I smell is grain. Not really. Yeah, maybe a little bit of hop, but just grain. No malt, just grain. Maybe a little bit of grass. Yeah, that's it. So we'll see what it tastes like. Yeah, that's Tuborg. Now, what I always used to remember from Tuborg is, at the time when Tuborg was quite popular, Host and Pils was also quite popular. And the big kind of difference between the two was Host and Pils had quite a sweet kind of underlying taste from front to back, but Tuborg just didn't have that. What it did have, a little bit of hops to it, especially at the back end. There's a little bit of bitterness at the back end, which actually made sense because it was probably closer to Czech Pilsner than it would be for a German Pilsner, and there was a kind of little bit of grassiness in the mid-tongue. And that's exactly what I remember from it, and it's exactly what I'm getting here. Because the last time I had Tuborg, I mean, obviously I had it, God, way back in the kind of the 80s and things like that. But I did have it in early noughties as well, actually in Denmark. And I think the last time I had it, I think it was 2005. But here's the thing was, I didn't actually have it in Denmark. I actually arrived in Denmark and spent a few hours in Denmark and then moved on to Sweden. And that's when I had it, when I actually got to the hotel that night, that hotel in Sweden, which was just outside Gothenburg. And yeah, they had it in their bar. And that was the last time I had it. And it's all right. It's easy drinking. It's on, I'm not going to say it's bitter, but it's on the kind of more neutral kind of bitter edge, you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't have that stupid sweetness that a lot of kind of Pilsners have. And it doesn't have that kind of wheatiness that some Pilsners have. You know, that kind of slightly Weiss, kind of watered down Weiss kind of beer feel to it. This one is quite neutral in the kind of sweet front. It's just kind of very linear, kind of, I would say what we call on the more savoury side. But you have that kind of grassiness and a bit kind of graininess. That's the kind of two main flavours you get, with a little bit of light hops at the back end. And actually overall, out of all these type of beers that are from Carlsberg, because this is a Carlsberg beer, let's not kid yourself, out of the kind of the Danish kind of Carlsberg beers, for the lighter ones, Pilsners and everything else and lagers, this would be my choice in having, because it's drinkable, it's got a little bit more to it, and it doesn't have any kind of annoying kind of stupid sweetness or any kind of other stupid flavours. And it's just, you know, it's fairly clean. It's, from that point of view, fairly clean, but there's a bit of flavour to it. Overall, actually not too bad. It was drinkable, plus it's a little bit softer in the carbonation as well. It's not like a lager carbonation, or like I say, I would say it's more of a kind of German Pilsner level of carbonation, so it's a lot lighter and everything else, and it just makes it a bit more drinkable. And not too bad, there's a bit of creaminess to it, you know, there's a little bit more to it, it's not kind of lacking body. I'm not going to say it's brilliant or wonderful, but it's drinkable and enjoyable, you know. Better to go for the brown ales, I would say. There's other options, even from Carlsberg, and I would say you're better off with the brown ale. But if you're kind of used to drinking kind of lighter beers and everything else, or lagers, then I would say this is better than going for Carlsberg or any kind of the other options that are out there. And you'll get Tuborg Classic everywhere in Denmark, seriously. You probably even get it in the toilets. That's one good thing I will say about Denmark, is they've got nice toilets. They're underground though, and that type of stuff. You think it's going to be a bit seedy, and you go in there, they're all done in the kind of wood panelling and things like that, and the cubicles are all nice kind of varnished wood and things like that, and there's attendants there keeping everything clean, and they're all free. So I would recommend, as the cases of you're out here sightseeing, there's some good options, especially in the tourist areas, to be able to go and use a toilet with, you know, a nice environment and nice conditions. You're not slumming it and that type of stuff, you know, and all free and everything else. And yeah, fair play to them for that, you know. So, which is strange actually, because quite a few places you can go to. I mean, my son quite likes kind of basically certain kind of Asian and Oriental food, and he's went for kind of wants ramen and things like this, and then you go there to some of the ramen places that are supposed to be kind of popular and get good reviews. They've not even got a toilet or that type of stuff, so you can't even wash your hands and things like that. It's like, even walking about just touching things and looking at things, if you're going to go and eat, you want to be able to wash your hands before you sit down and eat, things like that, you know, because God knows what you've been picking up and that type of stuff, especially when you've been fumbling with things, you know. And yeah, you go there and you think, can't even wash your hands before you start eating. You think, yeah. So we kind of went off, although we did find a nice place eventually that was a nice kind of Asian restaurant that did good ramen, and it was actually very enjoyable. They also did nice rice bowls and things like that. But overall, in general, it's fairly clean, obviously, Denmark, and like I said previously, the people are very friendly, but it's just nice to have actual proper public toilets that are free and actually are in a nice condition that you want to use, you know what I mean? Because some of the ones in the UK that you go into, you think, seriously, I may as well just piss on the fucking floor. No point in me walking all the way over or paddling my way over to the fucking urinal. I might as well just stand here and just piss here and let it join the rest. You know what I mean? And that's after paying fucking 50 pence to get into the fucking station toilet. Bastards. But yeah. So I've done the two kind of beers that if I was out and about in Denmark, depending on what was available, these would be the two kind of choices. At least with Tuborg Classic, it's everywhere, so even if it doesn't maybe have any kind of brown ale options or things like that, at least I've always got that to fall back on. And if you walk that way, it means you've always got an okay beer and things like this. But yeah, overall, it's alright. I'm not going to say it's anything special or wonderful, but I would say it's better than your mainstream piss waters. If I was in a pub in Scotland and I've got the choice of Tennent's and some of the other shit like Foster's and all this type of stuff, or this, then I would go for this before any of the kind of standard mainstream piss waters, just because it actually tastes of something and it's kind of feels, I'm not saying it is, but it feels more like a proper beer than Foster's or Carling or any of that type of stuff taste of, you know. And there's a nicer mouthfeel as well and all this kind of stuff. So let's break down these flavours. Have another drink to find out. So, nice kind of level of malt, light kind of caramel tones you're getting. No real kind of sweetness, there's maybe a little bit, but nothing really. And you're getting grain. It's the two main flavours at the front of the mouth. Kind of light, kind of caramel, a little bit of grain. But you're maybe getting little hints of grass, which again connects it as it moves on to the kind of mid-tongue. We're getting a little kind of grassy notes. You've got the grain, you've got the little light caramel, you've got very, very light sweetness, very, very light. Like I say, it's more on the savoury side. So it is, but as it moves to the kind of back end of the mid-tongue, just start getting a little kind of hoppy notes, just a little kind of, slightly kind of spicy, peppery, hoppy notes that transfer into the back of the mouth and mid-tongue. And again, very clean finish. All the flavours are all kind of balled up and they just kind of all dissipate at the one time. And it's a very clean, easy finish. And it's a very easy drinking beer. It's not overly flavourful in any way, shape or form, so it's good to have with food and things like that. It's easy drinking. But it's also, if you just want something if you're thirsty and you want a beer to just kind of cool you down, that you can just kind of neck quite quickly before you maybe move on to go to do something else tourist-wise, then this is probably your best option, because there's less resistance. There's not any high carbonation or kind of bubbly mouthfeel that you're kind of fighting against. It's kind of providing resistance. It really is quite silky with its kind of carbonation levels. It's maybe a little bit more than an ale, but it's not that far away. And it makes it quite sessionable. And overall, it's fine. I'm not going to say it's wonderful or great, but if you look at some of the pubs and the offerings for kind of lagers or pilsners in the UK, well, let's be totally honest, it's a fucking disgrace. It really is. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to slag this off because it's actually more palatable and better than what's available in the UK, which then just kind of reflects badly in the UK of how sad the kind of beer offerings are in a lot of kind of just normal pubs, you know. It's ridiculous. But what would I give this out of 10? There's a question. There is a question. What says, probably the best beer in the world. Don't give us that shit, Carlsberg. Give us your willy pish. Since, what's that number there? Since 1847 onwards, well, see if you bloody stayed in your lane, we'd probably have a hell of a lot more bloody breweries and a hell of a lot more bloody beers still available to us. You shits. Played your part in killing off this international beer industry. You just went from one country to the other and ripped through it like a fucking black plague. That's what you've been like. Oh, I'm telling you, I've got no happy thoughts or happy memories with Carlsberg. I think what they've done to the brewing industry in the UK and around Europe, they've been bloody dreadful. Seriously. They should be shot for what they've done. And others like them, like Heineken and Anheuser-Busch and Asahi and all these type of ones, they're all just as bloody bad. Greedy bastards. That's what they are. And they do no benefit to the beer industry in any way, shape or form. But getting past that, I'm in Denmark, and at the end of the day, if I don't want to drink anything associated with Carlsberg, then it's going to have to be tea, coffee or water. Because I'm sure they're even into the fucking soft drinks over here. You know, how do you get past that? You can't, you know. I'm basically in the devil's lair, you know what I mean? And right now it's a case as though you feel that you're drinking the devil's toilet, you know. But yeah, you can't get away from it, and it's just a reality, you know. It's a case as you become to Denmark, you're going to have to realise that, well, hey, well, Carlsberg dominates brewing in lots of different countries. Well, it really does here, and this is their home country, so it's no real surprise. But if I look at it on the basis whereas I would give our kind of mainstream pisswater lagers in between kind of 2 and 4, and 4 being really generous, what would I give Tuborg Classic? Like I said in the previous video, prices are all over the place here. You know, there are a lot. I would say, on average, they're at least a quarter to a third more than what you would probably pay in the UK, quite easily. And we are in the capital city, so I would say it's a case as though for what you would pay for a pint of lager, like say in London. I'm not talking about right in the centre of London or any kind of fancy places. I'm just talking about just in a kind of normal pub in London. You'll probably pay at least a quarter to a third more for the equivalent here. But remember, this is the capital city, so again, it's got that premium as well. It may be slightly cheaper outside in other towns and cities and things like that around about Denmark, but this is the capital, and of course, like most places, the capital brings its own premium just because of location and everything else. So yeah, so if you're paying kind of in between £8 and £9 for a pint, well, it's kind of in line with everything else in Denmark. It's just generally a bit more expensive. You know, one thing I would say is that the cannabis and scene is quite good in Denmark, because you can smell it. And I'm not saying it's the Danes. I presume it probably is the Danes, but there'll probably be some tourists doing it as well. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's quite prevalent when you're walking around the kind of tourist areas and that type of stuff. There is quite a regular waft of that kind of stuff, you know, the kind of people smoking cannabis products, which again, as far as I know, it's not legal here, just like it's not legal in the UK, but for some strange reason it's not really enforced. So the police aren't enforcing it here, and they're not enforcing it in the UK. So I think, well, what's the point? What's the point in basically having it as something illegal? If the law isn't being enforced, then what's the point of having it in law? At the end of the day, you might as well say, well, okay, small amounts of cannabis carried on your person and smoking it, blah blah blah, is legal. Anything more than a certain amount is classed as dealing and everything else. And if you make it legal, then of course you can have licenses and everything else, and it can be controlled a lot more. Because right now, it's not controlled, and it's everywhere. It's prevalent. So I just don't understand that. So that's one thing I did notice about Denmark. It's as bad as the UK of Jesus. And even sometimes you're walking past and you get a waft, and there's some fucker on a bike. You know what I mean? Obviously having a wee talk, you know, on the way home. That's another thing. There's bikes everywhere, by the way. Make the Dutch look like lazy bastards, so they do. Bikes everywhere, and there's bike lanes everywhere. So you can also hire bikes. There's lots of different kind of companies. There's Uber, there's Bolt, there's Lime, and there's Donkey, Republic and all this. There's lots of different places apps you can download to hire bikes. But what you do is you can also hire electric scooters here, but you need a helmet. Now who the hell's going to bring that with them and things like that? And I wouldn't want to buy one or rent one here because you see what the price of the beer is. So in my view, if you want easy transport, it's just rent an electric bike. Some will rent out electric bikes, some like Donkey Republic are just normal bikes and things like that. And there's also kind of small private hire kind of shops and companies available as well. But there's lots of kind of bike lanes and bike kind of tracks that are actually separate from the actual traffic and things like that. So around the centre and out and about in the suburbs and things like that. So if you want to kind of get around using that, then it's great. Metro's also very good as well. Nobody checks tickets, so I've noticed that. If I was here with a wife, then of course eventually she'd probably force me not to buy tickets, and you just go about with none and just play ignorant when if you ever do get stopped. But there's no barriers to kind of stop you going in and out, and there's no kind of conductors or anything like that to check. And there might be the odd spot check maybe that I've never seen, but since I've been here, nobody bothers their arse. Because most people don't even work with tickets, they work with kind of cards, and they just basically, you know, a bit like kind of Oyster cards, and they just obviously, you know, just check them in as they're coming in. There's no barriers to get in or out of the metro. So again, they're working a lot on trust and honesty, which basically means if it was in the UK, they'd be buggered, because there's obviously not much of that going about. But anyway, like I said, what would I give this out of 10? It's alright, it's fine. I'm going to give this, I'm going to give it 5.5 out of 10. It's fine, it's drinkable. It's better than the shit that we get back home. And it is nice. And it's that type of thing, you know, it's the case is if you drink a beer and it's kind of chosen environment, it always seems to work. But then you take that beer back to your home environment and you start drinking it, it just doesn't quite click, doesn't quite work, and just doesn't quite taste the way it did back in its own kind of place, you know what I mean? In its own hometown, that type of stuff. So yeah, Tuborg Classic works fine over here, and it's quite nice and pleasant enough. What it'd be like in the UK, I honestly don't know. But right now, it tastes a heck of a lot better than what's available in UK pubs. So that's why I'm giving it 5.5 out of 10. And yeah, I would recommend it here if you're a lager drinker, or if you want something that's just a quick pint. I mean, you could sink that very easily for refreshment wise and just to help you to cool down, and it's better than water because at the end of the day it's beer. But if you want something more to it, then I would recommend going for the brown ales or something like that. And I think there is obviously options of pale ales from the craft industries and that. Not so prevalent round about the kind of pubs and that type of stuff, some of the kind of IPAs or the pale ales and things like that, but the brown ales are quite easy to get. So if you're into the kind of more traditional beers and you like kind of a bit of a darker ale, then you're fine if you go for the brown ales. They're all quite enjoyable in their own right. So anyway, it's 5.5 out of 10. It's 4.8%. It costs a pretty penny, like everything else in Denmark. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye for now.